I'm just going to refer to him as John. John, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Hi, Vic. Thanks for having me.
We've got a lot to talk about tonight, John. Let's start right in with the first encounter. Your wife had an encounter of her own. That's what started all this off. But she has chosen to not come on and participate on tonight's show. I don't blame her whatsoever. But you told me that you would be able to share with the listeners the details of that encounter that she had. If you could start in by painting a picture for us to give us an idea of what the layout of the area was where she had that encounter, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, sure. Basically, the area, it's a heavily wooded area. It's in the southern states. Where I'm from, there are several foothills. So this area is where my in-laws lived at the time of my wife's encounter. She was 16, is where she lived at. We also lived there later on, which I'll tell you about here in a few minutes. But the area is heavily wooded, foothills. It's where I like to say that civilization stops, pretty much, and the wilderness takes back over. It's just one way in and out to get from town to where it's at. It takes, a good 35, 40 minutes. And it's just a very wilderness-like area. In the summers, the undergrowth around the woods and stuff like that is very thick. It's like a jungle. You can't see 2 feet into it.
All right, now that we've got a picture of what the area looked like, if you could set in telling us about the actual encounter that she had.
Sure. She had her encounter in the driveway. The driveway is probably around 80 yards long from her front door to the roadway. And the driveway is where the roadway ends. So she got up early one morning to catch her bus, because she lives out so far away that she had to get up early. So this was between 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning. So she goes outside, but when she does, she locks the keys to the house behind her. And because her parents at the time, one of them worked third shift, the other one had to be to work real early, nobody was home. So she locks the keys behind her, and she steps out and starts on her way to catch her bus. There's a curve in the driveway, and near the curve is a utility pole that's got a security lamp on it. And then at the end of the driveway is another utility pole that has a security light. And as she's walking on the curb, just reaching it, she's smoking, which she's obviously not supposed to be doing. And there is movement, or sound, coming from her right, coming from a wooded hollow, and then the driveway is flat, and to the left of the driveway is a field. It's got a slight incline, and then there's woods. So she hears movement to her right, coming from the wooded hollow. And as she's walking, she sees it, or hears it, and she throws the cigarette down. Her immediate thought was, oh no, that's my dad. That's just the first rational thought that hit her mind. So she can hear it. She can hear it. It's like a labored breathing, like it's tired. It's been out walking around for a while, almost like it's making its way home. And as it steps into the driveway, she sees it for what it is. She sees it, clearly. She gets a full view of it. And at this point, she's only probably maybe 20 yards away from it. And when she sees it, she lets out a gasp. And it stops mid-stride and slowly looks at her, turns its head to the left to look at her. And when it looks at her, she said they exchanged glances for about, she said it felt like forever, but in real life it's probably 10 or 15 seconds. But it just gave her a feeling of just dread, just like you are not supposed to see this. Don't tell anybody. And as strange as that sounds, that's what she said. And then just bounded from the driveway up that 4-foot incline, and in a few steps, it was in the woods. And she said she just stood there, frozen, listening to it run off down into the woods until she couldn't hear it no more. And at that point, she had no other option. The only thing she could do, and her only means of escape, was to run to the bus stop, which she did. And she said she ran faster than she'd ever run in her life.
Once she got onto the bus, John, did she share the fact that she had had that encounter with anyone on the bus?
Yes, she did. She told her bus driver that she had seen, the only thing that she could rationalize at that time was a bear. Now, where I live, we don't have bears. We really don't have any predators around here. We have coyotes. We don't have any large predators like bear or anything like that. We have deer, we have coyotes, turkeys, things like that. But there are no bear here. They may be introducing them now into my state, but at that time there were none around. I still don't think there's none around my area. But the bus driver, that's what she said. We don't have bear around here. You must have seen something else. So she gets to school, and we're dating at the time, and she tells me she saw a bear in her driveway. Where'd you do that? She gets to school, and she tells me that she saw a bear in the driveway. I told her, we don't have bears here. And she starts describing to me what it was. She describes it to be taller than her dad. Her dad's 6'4". She said it was well muscled, like a bodybuilder, but bigger. Really thick muscles in the chest, the arm, and even though it had hair on it, it was covered in either dark brown or black, round inch-length fur all over it, but you could still see the muscle definition underneath. That its legs were bent backwards, if you will, canine-like. She didn't see the feet. She was focused up higher. That it had hands. It had fingers. She said, like, the fingers were freaky long. It's one of the things that creeped her out about it initially was how long the fingers were with long claws on the ends. That the head was canine. Later on, after we talked about it, she said it looks just like a werewolf off a movie. But the head was canine, and that it had a snout on it. It wasn't a really long snout, but it wasn't a short snout either. It was somewhere in the middle. It had ears on top of its head that stuck straight up, like a German Shepherd's, and they had little tufts of hair on top. And that its eyes, when it looked at her, they reflected the security light behind her. And it was a yellowish white color, amber. And that when right before it left, it did something. It wasn't like a full-on, like you'd see in a horror movie, snarl, but it did show its teeth. Almost just like a gritting its teeth, frustrated manner right before it jumped. So she told me all these things when she got to school, and I pulled up a picture. It was a drawing that someone had did of a dog man that they had seen. I just typed in werewolf. At that time, I had no idea that these things were in existence. And I pulled it up, and she said, yeah, that's it, right there. What is that? I said, that's a werewolf.
Did you ever get the impression that your wife was afraid that after sharing the details of that encounter with you that you wouldn't believe her?
The way that she acted, I don't think it crossed her mind, Vic, because she was at that point trying to rationalize it herself. A bear. That's the only thing, even though bears don't live in the area, that's the only thing she could rationalize was a bear. And she had no idea about dogman activity just as I did. We had no idea these things even existed, never heard of them. We're students in high school at this point. So at that point, no, I don't. But after we did some research and found out what it was, then yes, she was very apprehensive about speaking about it to anybody. I think of how a lot of witnesses are, because once you realize what it is that you've seen, people will be very cautious in telling others because it's just a sad fact that most people won't believe you.
That is a sad fact. It's reality, though. Your wife and I, as you know, we had a nice long talk about her encounter. It's pretty clear to see that that encounter really impacted her in a severe way. Since when you consider the nature of that encounter, the fact that she was so alone, the fact that the closest person, the closest help was so far away from her at that moment, it only makes sense that it would impact her so severely. But after your encounter that you both had together, I think 3-4 years later, which we're about to get into in just a bit here, after you had your own encounter with that dog man or with a dog man when she was present, did that, in your opinion, kind of help her deal with her encounter a little better? As you know, misery loves company.
Well, I don't think it did, and I'll tell you why. She never, for 1 second, thought that what she saw was not real. She knew she'd seen something. What, she did not know. But she never, it was such a vivid experience, she never thought for 1 minute that, have I had a momentary break in my sanity and I've gone crazy? So she was never like that. But I will tell you, when we saw it outside for the second time and she laid eyes on those eyes, or at least another set that looked like the one she saw back in her first encounter, that you could see that it shook her up pretty bad. And I should mention that anytime we talk about it, that it will just take her back to the place that she was in that driveway. You can see it, you can hear it, and it's just a visual change that's with her. It's just something that's been burned into her memory that you can mention it and it'll take her right back.
Oh yeah, I noticed that when I talked with her, she made that change. It was almost as if she was standing alone on that driveway again. It's a strange phenomenon, but with a lot of dogman encounter eyewitnesses, not only do they fight a battle with trying to get over the trauma of the encounters that they have, a lot of them also fight a battle trying to figure out if the effect that encounter had and is having on them is normal. There are a lot of people that see these things that not only ask questions about what dogmen are when we have our talks about their encounter, but they also, it's not uncommon for them to spend a lot of time asking questions about if they're taking a lot more time to get over that encounter than most of the other eyewitnesses that I talk with. So it's a double-edged, vicious sword. It's just so unfortunate. Let's move on to the second encounter that we wanted to cover tonight. Let's talk about the encounter that you had, John, where your wife came downstairs and she saw the dog man that you were laying eyes on.
Fast forward a few years, well, we fell on hard times and we had to move back in with her parents. And this was just a few years later. So that put us right back in the area where she saw the first dog man. So me being back there and knowing what had went on there, I was extremely interested to know if it was still around. So I had that interest coupled with the fact that there was some weird stuff going on there. They had 42 cats that lived there. How did they get that number? When they moved into the property in the early 2000s, they brought some cats with them. And my mother-in-law kind of got a soft heart, so she would keep feeding these cats. Like the amount of cat food they went through was extraordinary. But cats would do what cats do and multiply, and other cats would come around, and that all leaded up to 42 cats being around here at one count at the start of the summer. They had like swarm you. There's everywhere. Most of them were feral cats, wild cats. You couldn't pet them or anything like that. So these cats would go missing in the night. You'd see them one day, and then they'd go missing. And an interesting point about it is a lot of times when the cats would venture near the woods, you could almost bet that that cat wouldn't be around much longer. And that was the case. So if they get close to the woods during the day and they get a habit of going close to the woods, chances are they'd go missing. And the number drifted down in one summer. It went down to 10. The start of the summer was 42. The count at the end was 10. So something was playing absolute havoc on these cats and taking them. But the weird thing about it was that there's no evidence of something getting them. There's no, when cats fight or something like that, or there's the fur flies, and it's true. There's cat hair that goes everywhere, but I couldn't find anything like that. I couldn't find any cat hair. I couldn't find any bones, any blood. There was no sounds. I stayed up late at night. There was never any sound of something getting these cats, but they was just getting taken in the night. So that was a red flag. A second red flag was that there was paths in the woods. I would go in and look around, and there would be paths that would just seemingly go off in the woods, and they'd go for a long time. Now, of course, we do have deer, as I mentioned earlier, so deer can make game trails and stuff like that. But what a deer cannot do is have tree branches that are broken off at my shoulder level and higher. Something was moving through and just breaking tree branches off, just to clear its path. And no one goes in those woods. So that's the second red flag. So I would go out at night a lot of times, and I would sit and listen, or I would walk around if I heard a disturbance in the woods. A lot of time you'd hear a footfall. And it wouldn't be something quiet, like, how a lot of times a deer in the woods, when it walks, it'll try to be quiet. You won't hear them stepping on many branches. But whatever this is, didn't really care. It's just walking through the woods, breaking branches, just like a person would do if they were walking through the woods and didn't mind being heard, just walking through the woods. So this would walk up, and you could almost set your watch by it. It would come up around 2 o'clock every night that summer. Every night it would come up. And there's a kennel of dogs in the backyard. They had 4 beagles that were chained up. And these dogs would just go crazy. And I mean, like something was hurting them. Just absolutely go nuts. And you could go out there and you could hear them. Whatever it was would walk up behind their kennel and then make a left, and walking in the woods, go back to where the yard wasn't anymore, and then just continue on in the woods. This would happen all the time. So I would go out and I would listen to it. I would try to go and take my flashlight and try to see what it was in the woods. And I never would. But if whatever it was would hear me outside, or hear me open the door, or hear me walk, it would usually stop. And it would take a few steps and it would stop. Or it would walk for a while and then turn around and go back the direction it came. So during this time, I would tell my wife that there's still something going on out here. I don't know what it is, but there is still something out in the woods here. And I said, I think I get an idea of what it is. And of course, that of course gets her attention pretty well. And she said, you should really be careful in what you're doing out there, looking for this thing, because if it's what I saw, you don't want to see it. You don't want to be around it. So one evening we came back from a fair, and normally in the summertime we'd be outside or in the yard or we're doing something like that. But this day was different because we'd been at the fair all day. We was tired. My daughter was just a baby. She was just a few months old, so we was just laying low in the house that evening. And around 10 or 11 o'clock, there is a big bang on the side of the house. And there's a cat that makes the noise that the cats make when they're, in an alarm, that screech the cats make. And it was startling because it just been real quiet, and all of a sudden there's this bang and there's this cat screaming. So at this point, after all the weird stuff that's been going on, I kept a flashlight and a pistol at the ready near the door so I could step out back or out front and just look. So I went up front and looked around, just out the front door, couldn't see anything. Rushed to the back door, sliding glass door, opened it up, turned on the back porch light, and just did a quick scan with the flashlight. And in the backyard is a tree stump. The tree stump's taller than I am by a couple of inches. And out there, above this tree stump, is these two eyes. These two yellowish-white eyes looking back at me. And when I saw it, I was just like, oh my God. Because I instantly thought about what she had seen in the driveway and what I suspect it was out there all along. So when I spotlighted it, it ducked. It was not a fast duck, but it was a slow, I'm going to sneak down behind this stump type of movement. And when it did that, it scared me, so I just instinctively took the flashlight and hit it real hard against the side of the house. And when I did that, the eyes came back up. So at this point, I yelled for my wife, come here, you've got to see this. And she gets out to the back steps where we were standing, and she sees it, and she goes, oh my God. So we're sitting here looking at this thing, and it would go up and look above the stump, and it would go down. And then it would crouch down, and it would peek around the side of the stump. Sometimes we saw one eye, and sometimes we saw two. But we did this for probably 5 or 6 minutes, just watching this thing look at us. And if we wouldn't make any noise, it would stay behind the stump. If you take the flashlight and hit it against the side of the house, it would look around, like it was wondering just what we were doing. And one of the times when it was looking at us above the stump, I got these binoculars that had a slight night vision function to them. They didn't work really well, but one of us would hold the flashlight and the other one would look through the binoculars at it, trying to get a good look at what it was. When I looked through, you could see that the head was large. It wasn't like ours that is oval, it was more circular. And from what we could see through the binoculars at night, again with just the light from the flashlight on it, the back porch light, was that the eyes on it were large. I couldn't see eyes, I could see their eyes shine. And they were slanted. Ours are pretty much straight on. These had a cant to them. And I could see the top of the nose, whatever it was, most definitely did have a snout. So I could see the top of it, the bridge of the snout, and that's where the eyes went down and met. And of course, seeing that, I mean, just immediately, it creeped out. Yeah, I freaked out the entire time, but actually looking through binoculars and seeing it for what it is, and just everything put together, it's just us there. I have a .40 caliber pistol, and I've thought this whole time I'm going to shoot it. And after I looked through the binoculars, I really wanted to shoot it then because, well, I don't know, for me, that's just what I wanted to do. I saw it as a threat, and I wanted to get rid of the threat. But just as I was getting ready to shoot it, actually was, putting pressure on the trigger, my wife was like, stop, don't do that. I was like, well, why not? She said, well, what if you make it mad? What if the .40 caliber round is not big enough to take this thing? He said, it's just us that's up here, and our daughter's inside. And so that thought was both scary and rational at the time, so we ended up just going back inside and securing the house, and that was it.
Thank goodness that was it. I'm so glad your wife told you not to shoot it, especially with that .40 caliber pistol. She was right. More than likely, it would only just make it upset. And considering that you did have kids in the house, who knows what could have happened from there. We're going to keep John's identity anonymous on the show here, and consequently, I'm not going to reveal where he lives or where he was living at the time with his in-laws. All I can share with you on that is the area where that house is. If there's a Dogman Central, that's it. So that would explain why you had those two encounters in a fairly short period of time. Now, having said that, John, there's another incident that happened after that I want you to talk about involving the ranger. You were coming home from work that one night?
Yes. Yes. So one thing I wanted to mention was before the stump incident took place, I would go in the woods. I mean, for miles, a mile or two in the woods, and I would follow paths, and I would look for signs, look for footprints, look for, again, those broken off tree branches, trying to find bedding or structures or anything I could to document this, whatever it was. And again, to primarily see if it was still in the area. And I was successful in getting a few prints. But after the stump incident happened, that was good enough for me. It was clearly still in the area, which, again, that freaked me out pretty bad, so I no longer went in the woods and until later. But for a long time, I did not venture in the woods until curiosity got the best of me again, and I took the risk of going back in the woods later, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But I worked at a job where I was armed, and my part-time job was close to my full-time job, so a lot of times I wouldn't change. I just go to my part-time job and stay in my uniform from my day job. So for a while I had this routine where I would come home. This was shortly after the stump incident, to where I would come home and get there around 12 or 12:30. And the driveway at that time, there was a chain that my in-laws had up. You had to pull up to the chain, take the chain off, pull through, and then put the chain back up. As I got out of my vehicle, my window was down, and I got out of my vehicle, I was always real cautious, because this is at nighttime, and I know what's out there. So it's a very cautious and high alert situation anytime you're outside at night. So I got out of my vehicle, I went and took the chain down and walked it across the driveway, and as I was just getting ready to drop it on the ground, there was movement in the woods, probably 10 feet from where I was at. I did not hear the, whatever it was, approach, and I was listening for that. So what that means is whatever was there was standing there. It was standing there when I pulled up. It did not walk up on me. It was there, waiting. So immediately I drew down on the woods. I took my pistol out of its holster, and I hollered into the woods, "Hey, who's ever in the woods, I'm going to shoot." Of course, there was no answer. So standing there in my headlights, again, as I'm on high alert, I'm nervous. I don't know what's in the woods. I've got an idea of what it is. But I don't want to shoot, again, because rationality plays into it. What if it is a person? What if it's something? You should never shoot just blindly into the woods. But at that time, I got to tell you, I was certainly thinking about it. So I dropped the chain, and again, I was in my headlights. I could not see, so I just put my hand out on my truck, and I slid my body along the side of the truck, again, just keeping the pistol out on my side until I got to where I could jump in my vehicle and drive down to the house. And so when I did that, I got out and I ran inside, I grabbed my wife and had her come out to the driveway with me. I always like, as long as it was close to the door at least, so we could make a fast retreat if we had to, have her with me. At least there'd be two people that's seeing and hearing the same thing. 'Cause it's such an unbelievable thing that's going on. And whatever it was, that same type of footfall I was talking about, walked in the woods, but it didn't come out in the yard. It just walked the perimeter of the yard, in the woods, all the way around. Again, it's summer, you just cannot see in the woods during summer. It's so lush with vegetation, you just can't see. And it walked around the yard, around back behind the dog kennel, where it always seemed to come from, and walked back down deep into the woods. But whatever was there, and I have a good idea what it was. I don't know for sure because I didn't see it, but I'm almost certain it was what was behind that stump was waiting for me. And I get the feeling, based on what I know now, because I was in the woods, and because I saw it just a few days prior to that, it was saying, well, you've been looking for me, and you've seen me. I'm looking for you. Here I am.
When that encounter happened with whatever that was in the woods, at that moment, did you start to get the impression that maybe it was more than one dog man that was around your area, or it sounds to me like you had the impression that it was probably the same one that you and your wife had seen looking at you over the top of that stump that day that was still hanging around and checking you out?
At that time, I thought it was still the same one. Now, I don't know.
The day that you contacted me to tell me about everything that had happened on that property, you told me, if I remember correctly, that the day before you had snapped that picture of the footprint where you had gone deep into the woods looking for these things. Knowing now what you know, I'm sure chills just have to run up your spine knowing about the kind of danger you're putting yourself in by heading way back into the woods around there like that.
Yes, absolutely. During the times, I just got out of the service, so some of the encounters happened before that 4-year time. And I've just returned and was doing some more researching in the area. But I just come across your show, Vic, and of course during that time it wasn't out yet, and up until just recently I didn't know it was in existence until I went online and was doing some more research and came across it. And I listened to other people and the experience that they've had with them after speaking with you and getting the knowledge of what these things are. Absolutely. It's a very, very scary thing looking back and realizing just how much danger that I was in. Because, yes, I was armed. I was armed with a rifle and armed with my .40 caliber. But from what we know about them and other people's experiences, that's not good enough. That's just probably going to anger them.
You're probably right. It's an uncomfortable thought, but that's probably accurate. There was a fourth incident that you had late one night. Please tell us about that.
Yes, this one was the most scariest for me. This is after the tree stump incident, and this is after the driveway incident. One evening between 12 and, I'd say 2 o'clock in the morning, early morning hours, I woke up. And I just had the strangest feeling of dread or danger. It's hard to explain, but something is not right. Something is wrong, and I just woke up in a state of alarm, which is, I don't think that ever happened to me before or since. But I looked. I didn't move. I stayed where I was at. I was laying in bed, and of course my wife was there, and my daughter was in the room, and I was in the bed on the window side, which the window was facing the backyard and close to the tree line. And I look up through the mini blinds, and I see a eye looking back in at me. And when I say I see the eye, I didn't see white. I just saw an iris, a dark color, almost like an orange iris looking back at me, looking down at me. And I'm telling you what, I was just in a state of absolute fear. I mean, I woke up scared, but seeing that, I mean, it was just absolutely terrifying. And all I could do was lay there. I was not so scared like you hear about people, they get into like almost a paralysis when they see something that's incredibly scary like that. But it wasn't like that for me. It was just a point of I don't want to move because whatever this is right there, just a few feet through me, and the only thing between me and it is a thin piece of glass. And I just didn't want to move, so I thought whatever it was would just come right on in. My pistol was on the dresser, just a few feet away. And I really thought about getting to that, but again, I was just too scared to get to it. I felt like if I got up, that it was coming in. That's just the feeling that I had. If I get up, it's going to come in after me. So I just laid there, I mean, for hours. I didn't move. I didn't look back at it. I just laid there. And then my wife woke up and said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "There's something at the window." And she said, "What?" I said, "There was something at the window and it was looking in at me." I said, "I've been laying here for hours." And that was pretty much it. Just a scary, scary experience.
I'll tell you what, there's nothing creepier than the idea of laying in bed, which is supposed to be one of the safest places you can be, and finding out that one of those things is watching you. That's straight out of a nightmare. There have been quite a few other people that have reported that experience. They've been in bed and suddenly come to the realization that one of these things was looking in the window at them. I can't even imagine what that would be like. Not good. I want to go back here and touch on some things you've said during the show tonight here, John. The first thing I want to share with you, the night where you saw the dog man looking at you over the top of the stump, you heard that impact on the back of the house, and then you heard that cat squall. It's not uncommon for eyewitnesses to report looking out their back window, for example, and seeing their cat in the jaws of a dog man. And it's also not too uncommon, it's not as common as that, but it's not too uncommon for people to report having something, apparently a dog man, throwing cats against their house, either killing them or severely injuring them. I've got no idea what that's all about. All I can do is tell you that I've heard that several times before.
It's interesting you say that, because for the longest time I've wondered what the noise was. Was it slapping the side of the house, or what exactly was the noise? So that would fit, that it was throwing the cat up against the side of the house. Maybe that is what it was doing.
It seems like that's just one of the many strange things that they like to do. Like a lot of other things that they do, I'll never understand it, but that's how it is. Now, had her parents, going back to talk about your wife's encounter, had your parents seen any dogmen around the area before she even had that encounter that night?
No.
Talking about the dogman that you saw looking at you over the stump and around it, did you ever get a chance to look at its muzzle?
The only thing that I could see, I couldn't see it just looking out back because it was too dark and too far, but looking through the binoculars over the stump, I could see the bridge of its nose. I saw its muzzle. I didn't see the whole thing, I only saw the top. But you could see where it started and where it terminated, and you could see where the eyes met the bridge of the nose. And, of course, the backdrop of its large circular head. I did see that.
Now, moving forward, I want to talk about the encounter, the situation where you were in bed and you saw it looking at you through the window. You mentioned that its eyes looked orangish. Amber is the most common color that people say that they see. So that just falls right in line with what I'd expect to hear. So people do report seeing red eyes. People report seeing them with black eyes, but like I said, amber's, for whatever reason, the most common. Moving forward, I understand you've got some questions that you'd like to ask about dogmen.
Yeah, Vic, I do. I've got a few of them for you. The first one is, you mentioned a window before of people seeing the dogmen at their windows. And I've heard stories of them actually knocking or tapping, or you might even touched on your shoulder, just for people to go and investigate what the noise was and throw open the curtains and see one standing there. It seems like they might enjoy scaring people. Do you think that's so?
Oh, I've got no doubts about that. They seem to go so far out of their way to scare people. I never will understand it. They'll put themselves in a position just like the one you just mentioned, where they'll scratch on a window, or I know of them scratching on screens, doing something like that to get someone to come over to the window and part the drapes, and there they are standing, baring their teeth. But anyway, they do seem to really enjoy scaring people within an inch of their life.
That's scary stuff. Okay, Vic, my second question for you is, these things munched on 32 cats there. What do you think is the reason why they enjoy eating cats so much?
I think they would have to be opportunists. If something makes itself available for them to eat, like a cat, then I'm sure they're going to take that opportunity. Since we are talking about wild animals here, that's what I would expect. How they are seemingly so easily able to catch cats, which they seem to do without any trouble, I really don't know what's behind that. I do know, even though they are called dog men, and when you hear the word dog, you don't think of something that can climb. For whatever reason, these things seem to be able to climb well. They do seem to spend time up in trees. The most recent eyewitness to tell me about seeing one up in a tree, he saw a dog man jump out of a tree about, I think, 80 feet from him. And he said it was about 400 to 500 pounds. And it was so heavy, he said that he could actually feel the impact through the ground when it hit. And after it hit, luckily it ran off and left the area. But maybe as far as the whole cat topic goes, they'll lie in wait up in a tree, and when a cat goes by underneath, unsuspecting, that dog man jumps down and dispatches the cat. Since they do seem to be ambush hunters, maybe it's also there are certain circumstances where they're lying in wait behind a tree or something, and a cat comes walking by and gets snatched up. No one's going to be able to answer that question with 100% certainty, but that's just my best guess on the whole cat thing.
Okay, my last question for you is, these things their appearance is incredibly frightening to everybody that sees one. I know you've gotten so many reports on them. What is the most scariest thing about them that you get? The top, out of all the things that are scary about them, what's the scariest thing about them that you've gotten?
The feature that seems to shake people up the most is how scary their eyes are. That's what they can't shake, is the image of those eyes. So without a doubt, that's what it would be. I've got a question for you before we close the show out. Everybody's going to react differently to an encounter with a dog man. That's a given there. But most eyewitnesses seem to want to avoid the topic. They want to think about dogmen as little as possible. They especially don't want to go out looking for dogmen. After you had your encounter, John, why is it that you decided to go out and look for them to try and find out more about them? I know also that you spent quite a bit of time trying to research dogmen online and just get any information any other way that you could. Why is that?
Because it is just an incredibly interesting subject. Now, had I not seen one, I wouldn't have found it nearly as interesting. I wouldn't have believed it. I have to be honest with you. If I had not seen one and would hear this very show we're doing right now, there's a good chance that I would not believe it. I'd be skeptical. I actually had the Bigfoot investigators come out. One thing I want to mention about the Bigfoot researchers is when they came to the house, and they're both extremely nice people, but when they came and did their investigations, we would have to repeat or recant our stories to them a couple of times. And they were not on board with the whole idea of a dog man or a canine type cryptid running around out there. They were of the opinion that we were just misidentifying a Bigfoot, or that it was a deformed Bigfoot that we were seeing, or maybe just a regular Bigfoot and we saw it and it was not what we said that it was. But that was not the case. We know what we saw. It was not a Bigfoot. So if you people are out there and you have investigators that come up, Bigfoot investigators, and they don't think that what you're telling them is correct, just know that they are out there, and I think as time goes on, more and more dogman researchers are going to be coming online. But it's an incredibly frustrating experience to have people come up that are trained to look for one animal that is supposedly not in existence, and you're telling them about this thing that is running around on your land, where your family's at, and they don't believe you.
You know, that's something I will never understand, John. There are so many people out there that buy into the Bigfoot phenomenon hook, line, and sinker. And we're talking about people that haven't even seen a Bigfoot. But if you mention Dogman to them, they put their nose up in the air. They don't even want to hear anything about it, as if it's just an impossibility. That's something I will never understand at all. If it's of any comfort, I do know the Bigfoot researcher that heads that group that stopped by your house that day. And I can tell you, without a doubt, he buys into the Dogman phenomenon wholeheartedly now. He has no doubts that dogmen are out there.
I'm glad that he now believes in them, and so when other reports come into his agency that, he can help out those people that have them, but also for his safety. A lot of people go out into the woods looking for Sasquatch, but as other guests on your show have mentioned, sometimes they find something else out there.
That's right. They find something out there that is even worse to run into than a Sasquatch. In closing, John, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, Vic, I do. The innocence of the woods is gone. I know that these things are out there now, and I want to be able to document as best I can and find whatever I could. At least that was, I suppose, that was the case before I found out everything that I had. I'm absolutely apprehensive about going in the woods now. But prior to that, my reasoning was just trying to document. Look at these footprints that I found, or what is causing this path. This thing is out here. People need to know that these animals, or whatever they are out there. And I am not so sure that if you put yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time, and these things decide that, hey, I'm going to eat you, that you're going to make it out. Because if you put yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time, there's virtually nothing you can do to stop these things. They're just too much for anybody to handle. Like I mentioned earlier, I did not know the information that Vic has put out, and that the other people have come on his show have put out. I did things that were careless. I thought that by taking my pistol or the rifle into the woods that I was adequately protected. From what I've learned, and from talking to Vic and people that he has spoken with, is that is an extremely dangerous and hazardous thing to do. And I would put myself, 2 miles into the woods where I very easily could have been attacked or injured. I just say this, I would stay out of the woods if you know the dogmen are in the area. If you have to put yourself in the woods anywhere, be extremely cautious and have your head on the swivel. But the biggest advice I can give to you all, and it's just like other people have mentioned, is if there is a dogman in your area, or even suspected, do not go looking for it, because you might go into the woods one day and just never come out. You'll just be another missing person case.
Thanks for those good words, John. Thanks for your time. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, Vic. Thank you again for having me.
Don't be a stranger, okay?
I won't.
Well, have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.